Welcome back to Nightmare Crypt. I don't know how long I have before this stops being my choice to tell. I'm writing this like a confession because that's what it feels like. I took a job I shouldn't have taken, ignored a rule that was never explained, and now I'm living with something that doesn't turn off when the lights come on. If you're listening to this late at night and thinking about picking up a quiet security gig to pay the bills, I need you to hear me out. I can't undo what I did. I can only tell you what happened and hope you don't repeat it. I used to believe that if something truly bad happened, you'd know right away. Alarms, blood, screaming, police lights. That's not how this works. What happened to me started as a feeling I couldn't name, like noticing a smell you can't place, then realizing it's been in your clothes for days. By the time I understood what that rule was really about, it was already too late to follow it. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I just need this out there before I lose the ability to explain it in a way that makes sense. Because lately I catch myself forgetting details I know should scare me, and that scares me more than anything else. The job was night security at a private research and storage facility about 40 minutes outside the city. One building, 2 floors above ground, one below. Middle of nowhere, surrounded by scrubland and old service roads that don't show up on Google Maps unless you zoom way in. The listing was plain. Overnight shift, minimal foot traffic, mostly camera monitoring, good pay for sitting alone. I'd been laid off 3 months earlier, my savings were gone. I told myself boring was good, quiet was good. I didn't ask many questions. During the interview, the site manager, a guy named Harold with nicotine-stained fingers, and a voice that always sounded like he'd just woken up, slid a laminated sheet across the desk. "These are the rules for night staff," he said. Most of them were obvious. Sign in, do hourly patrols, don't use your phone except on breaks, don't bring visitors. Then there was one line halfway down, not bolded, not numbered differently. "Rule 6, Harold said, tapping the paper without looking at me. "You'll notice it doesn't have an explanation. Don't worry about it. Just follow it." I read it. Never acknowledge movement in camera 9 between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. I laughed because it sounded like a joke someone forgot to finish. Is this some kind of test? No. So what's camera 9? It's a hallway feed. And what kind of movement? Any. That's not really. Just don't acknowledge it, he repeated, finally looking at me. His eyes were tired, not scared, just worn down, like this conversation had happened too many times. I should have pushed harder. I should have walked out. Instead, I nodded and signed the paperwork. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. How easy it was to agree. My first night was quiet, in the way people mean when they say they like quiet jobs. The kind where nothing happens and time stretches thin. I showed up at 9:45 p.m., signed in, clipped the badge to my belt, and settled into the security office just inside the main entrance. The office was small and windowless, lit by buzzing fluorescent panels that never quite stopped flickering. A desk bolted to the floor, a rolling chair with one armrest missing. A bank of monitors mounted on the wall, each labeled with a white sticker and black marker. Cameras 1 through 12. Exterior shots, loading docks, hallways, stairwells, the parking lot. Camera 9 was a narrow hallway on the lower level. Concrete floor, white painted cinder block walls, exposed pipes running along the ceiling. No doors visible in frame, just a long stretch of corridor that ended in darkness, where the camera's range cut off. It looked like nothing. I remember thinking it was weird they'd even bother monitoring it. I did my first patrol at 10, walked the perimeter, checked the doors, shined my flashlight into corners that hadn't seen daylight in years. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant and old metal, like a hospital wing that had been shut down and forgotten. Nothing out of place. Back in the office, I flipped through the binder they'd left for night staff. Incident reports from years back. Motion sensor false alarms. A raccoon that got into the trash enclosure. One report about a guy quitting mid-shift and never coming back. No explanation given, just position vacated. Around midnight, I poured myself bad coffee from the machine in the corner and leaned back in the chair, letting my eyes drift across the monitors. That's when I remembered Rule 6. I looked at camera 9. Nothing was moving. I told myself it was probably about avoiding distractions. Maybe there was a vent that rattled, or a shadow that flickered when the HVAC kicked on. Something that had caused complaints before. Companies love rules that exist because someone sued once. At 12:58 a.m. I caught myself watching the timestamp on that feed. 12:59. 1 o'clock. The image didn't change. Same empty hallway. Same hum of electricity through the speakers. I waited for something obvious. Something stupid, like a mouse running across the floor. Nothing happened. At 1:17 a.m. I noticed movement on camera 3 instead. Outside near the loading dock. Headlights in the distance. A truck passing on the service road. I logged it, like I was supposed to. When I glanced back at camera 9, my stomach tightened. There was something different, but I couldn't immediately say what. The hallway looked off. Not wrong exactly. Just not the same as it had been an hour earlier. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The far end of the hallway looked darker. Not like the lights were out. There were no lights down there to begin with, but like the darkness itself had thickened, like someone had turned down the contrast on just that part of the image. I felt stupid for staring. I checked the timestamp. 1:22 a.m. Never acknowledge movement. Movement, I muttered to myself. That's not movement. I clicked away to another camera and forced myself to focus on the routine. Logged the temperature reading. Checked the front door. Everything normal. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted back. By 1:40 a.m., the darkness at the end of the hallway had crept closer. Not fast. Not in a way you'd notice if you weren't comparing it to memory. It was like watching a shadow stretch as the sun sets, except there was no sun and no reason for it to change at all. My heart started beating faster. I could feel it in my ears. I told myself the camera's auto exposure was adjusting, or there was dust on the lens, or I was tired. At 1:59 a.m., something crossed the frame. It wasn't a clear shape, more like a distortion, a ripple, the way heat shimmers above asphalt. It passed from right to left, about halfway down the corridor, subtle enough that I almost missed it. I froze. The rule didn't say don't react, it said don't acknowledge. I sat there staring at the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse. My brain screamed at me to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But another part of me, the stubborn, rational part, wanted proof that I wasn't losing it. I rewound the feed. That was the first time I broke the rule. The playback showed nothing, just an empty hallway, static and silent. No ripple, no distortion, nothing. I exhaled, shaky and embarrassed. See? I whispered to the empty room. Nothing. I told myself I'd been keyed up all night, alone in a creepy building, letting my imagination run wild. When I glanced back at the live feed, the ripple was there again. This time it stopped in the center of the frame. I don't know how to describe what it looked like without making it sound impossible. It wasn't transparent, but it wasn't solid either. The floor beneath it bent, like it was being seen through warped glass. The pipes overhead bowed inward, just slightly, like they were being pulled toward it. And it was tall. I could tell that much. Taller than a person. My throat went dry. Every instinct told me to stand up, to run, to do something. Instead, I sat there, gripping the arm of the chair so hard my fingers hurt. Don't acknowledge it, I whispered. I don't know who I was talking to. Myself, Harold, God. The distortion shifted, like it was turning. I looked away. I stared at camera 1, then 2, then anywhere else. I counted my breaths. I focused on the hum of the lights, the stale smell of coffee. When I looked back at camera 9, the hallway was empty again. Normal, unchanged. At 3:01 a.m., my shift returned to being boring. I didn't tell anyone about what I'd seen. I convinced myself it was a trick of the camera, or stress, or sleep deprivation. When Harold asked how my first night went, I said, quiet. He nodded like that was the correct answer. The second night, I didn't look at camera 9 at all. At least, that was the plan. I followed the rules to the letter, did my patrols, logged everything, kept my eyes off that feed between 1 and 3. I even turned my chair slightly so it wasn't directly in my line of sight. Still, I felt it. That's the only way I can explain it. I felt watched. Not like someone was staring at me through the cameras, More like the building itself was aware of me, waiting for me to slip. At 1:30 a.m., I heard a sound through the speakers. It was faint, a soft, dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. My stomach dropped. I checked the audio levels. They were tied to the cameras automatically. Camera 9's mic was active. I shouldn't have listened. The sound repeated. Slow, deliberate, drag, pause, drag. I told myself it could be pipes contracting, or air moving through the vents. Old buildings make noise at night. But then I heard breathing. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a shallow, uneven inhale, followed by a long exhale. Like someone trying to stay quiet. I could feel sweat prickling along my back. I glanced at the edge of the monitor, just enough to see that the feed was still active. I didn't look directly at it. The breathing continued for nearly an hour. I sat there, barely moving, afraid that if I acknowledged it in any way, if I turned my head, if I spoke, if I stood up, something irreversible would happen. At exactly 3:00 a.m., the sound stopped. I went home that morning exhausted, my hand shaking on the steering wheel. I slept all day and still woke up tired. When I closed my eyes, I saw that warped hallway, the way the walls bent inward. On the third night, I told myself I'd quit if anything happened again. That resolve lasted until 1:12 a.m. I was filling out a report when I heard a knock. Not on the door to the building, on the wall behind me. One knock, solid, like knuckles on drywall. I spun around, heart pounding. The wall was bare concrete, no vents. Another knock, then another. Each one a little closer together, like whoever or whatever was doing it was getting impatient. I stood up, my chair clattering backward. "Hello," I called, my voice cracking before I could stop it. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Thick, heavy, like the air itself was pressing in on me. I realized with a cold wave of dread that the knocking had been coming from the direction of the lower level stairwell. From the hallway, camera 9 watched. I didn't look at the monitor. I grabbed my flashlight and told myself I was being ridiculous. There was a rational explanation. There had to be. The stairwell door creaked as I opened it. The smell hit me immediately. Damp concrete and something sour underneath it, like old sweat. I stood at the top of the stairs, listening. Nothing. I took one step down, then another. My flashlight beam jittered across the walls, illuminating peeling paint and rusted handrails. Halfway down, I heard it again. Breathing. Right below me. I froze, my foot hovering over the next step. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The breathing stopped. For a long moment there was nothing. Then very slowly something shifted in the darkness at the bottom of the stairs. I didn't see it clearly, I didn't want to, but I felt it. Not like a draft, like heat being sucked out of the space. My skin prickled, and my vision blurred at the edges. A thought surfaced in my mind, uninvited and terrifyingly calm. It knows you're looking. I backed up, nearly tripping over myself as I retreated up the stairs. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands slick with sweat. I didn't finish my shift. I sat in the office until dawn, every muscle tense, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. When Harold showed up to relieve me, he took one look at my face and sighed. "You went down there, didn't you?" he said. I opened my mouth to lie, but the words wouldn't come. He rubbed his eyes. "Rule 6 isn't just about cameras," he said quietly. "It's about attention." "What is it?" I asked. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. He hesitated. "It's easier if you don't know." "I already know something," I snapped. I felt it. Harold met my gaze, and for the first time I saw fear there. Real fear. "It notices patterns," he said. "Routine, curiosity. Once it realizes you're aware of it, it starts testing boundaries." "Testing how?" His jaw tightened. "By seeing how much of itself you can handle." I quit that morning. At least I tried to. The paperwork went through. My badge was deactivated. I was paid for my hours. I never went back to the facility. But the rule didn't stay there. The first time I noticed it was at home, a week later. I was lying in bed, staring at the dark hallway outside my bedroom. The shadows at the far end looked thicker than they should have. I told myself I was imagining it. Then I heard breathing, shallow, uneven, right outside my door. I don't know what happens next yet, still trying not to acknowledge what's moving at the edge of my vision. Between 1 and 3 in the morning. If you're hearing this and thinking about taking a night security job with unexplained rules, don't. If someone tells you not to look, not to listen, not to acknowledge, believe them. And if this channel has ever given me chills before, maybe take a second right now to subscribe. I don't know how many more nights I'll be able to keep talking like this, because whatever I noticed back there, it noticed me back, and it followed me home.